The sandwich generation. Not as yummy and delicious as it sounds. The sandwich generation means you are in the middle, and on one side are your kids, and on the other side are your parents, and everybody's growing up and getting older.
We always have an odd one in the crowd.
So it's kind of odd.
Decidedly odd.
Doesn't that strike you as a little bit odd?
No, that doesn't strike me as a little bit odd.
It's the Bob and Sheri Oddcast. It's stuff we wouldn't, couldn't, or shouldn't do on the regular show. Now, here's the Oddcast.
Hey, your life is a wild thing. And just when you think you know all the characters and all the plot points, here comes a big twist to throw you completely out of whack. And for me, I suddenly find myself in that sandwich spot between my kids and in this case, my mom, because my stepdad has passed away and the devil summoned my father back to hell. So here I am with just my mom, right? And my mom is one of the strongest and healthiest and most independent people that I have ever known. And in my mind, my mom is young in the way that I think that's true for a lot of us. You know, you don't ever see your parents first as people, but then you never really can wrap your head around your parents getting older. And it's a double truth for me because when my parents split up, my father took me and my brothers away from our mom, and I didn't see her from when I was 12 till when I was 28. So that's a big gap. And so a lot of my most formative years and becoming a young adult and all, I didn't have my mom in my life. And so when she came back into my life, there was this weird glitch in the matrix where I still thought of her as the mom that I had when I was 12. Does that make sense? Can you see how that could be?
Yeah. No, yeah.
And so, you know, I was able to accept, my mom was a young mom. My mom was a teenager when she had my brother. So my mom was always a really, really young mom and a youthful mom, which those two things are not the same necessarily. My mom was both young and youthful. And even as time began to pass, my mom stayed locked in my head at about 56 years old, right? That seemed to be the age my mom felt like to me. After we reconnected, she was about 56 because she's so healthy, so strong, so youthful. But in reality, my mom's 83 and she's had a lifelong issue with her eyes. She's at risk right now of going completely blind in one eye. She's had a detached retina. She's had all these issues over the years, multiple procedures done. She just got real unlucky where her eyes are concerned. And she also has a kind of rare blood disorder that I don't even fully understand, that she has to pay attention to and be careful with. So as I'm saying, my mom is the healthiest person. I know it doesn't sound like it, but my mom is the healthiest person. And she bounces back quickly from, you know, any kind of a sickness. She almost never has a cold. And so I guess I just wasn't really prepared for time to telescope and collapse into the present moment a couple of weeks ago when my mom called me and she had just gotten out of the emergency room and she's really struggling and she's by herself. My brother Dale used to live next door. He passed away unexpectedly and she's really alone. If it wasn't for her church, she just would be so alone. And I need to go and take care of her, but it's hard. She doesn't need my care. She needs companionship. She needs an extra set of hands. She needs me right now. She needs me. And it's hard to do because she's exactly 2,201 miles away from my driveway. And, you know, I've got a husband and kids and pets and a job and all of the things that everyone has when that call comes. I have seen so many of our listeners. I watch their social media. I've seen so many of our listeners land in this exact same spot. And I guess I thought it wouldn't happen for me because, you know, my mom was going to be 56 forever. So we got a call. We're going to pause here so that you can hear this story too. hearing from our listeners is just basically our favorite thing in the wide world. And you can call us and leave a message at any time of the day or night at 844-52-SHERI. Or if you have our Bob and Sheri app, which is free, you can look at the screen, the bottom center. There's a little tiny cartoon microphone. All you got to do is tap it and talk, and the app will magically send your voice flying through the sky. So this is the message we got.
Hi, this is Kathy from Yuma. Longtime Bob and Sheri listener, first time caller. Hi everyone, miss you Bob. Everyone's doing a great job, and thank you for staying on and keeping us all happy and cheery and getting through all these crazy times. But anyway, I wanted to talk to Sheri about the episode I just heard about going and staying with her mom and spending the time with her for about 2 weeks to test it out. And I can just share that I had the honor and pleasure of being my mom's caregiver after she was diagnosed with ovarian cancer at 60. We lost her 4 years ago at 65. And I did not really get along with my mom, but we got to know each other and I got to know her as a person. She was not just my mother. She was once a young girl and a wife who had aspirations and dreams. And I got to meet her and know her for who she really was, because she already knew me because, of course, from birth. And it was just a great honor for me to be able to do that. And she told me that if anything good came out of her getting cancer was the fact that we finally had a relationship, an actual mother-daughter relationship. And I will forever be grateful. I wish we would have had more time and that would have happened sooner. But Sheri, if you can do it, do it. Sounds like you and your mom talk and get along great. And I had that for 5 precious years. And nothing will ever replace that time that I had with her and the honor of caring for her and watching her rest. I would love to have her here still, but not in pain. So I am forever grateful for that time I had. And it's just something I encourage you to do if you can do it. Thank you again. We'll continue to listen. Thanks for all the laughs. Bye.
That, oh my God. I mean, I so relate to that. I do have a great relationship with my mom, but it's been a lot in the making. Max has been with me for this whole journey. And so, Max, that it's 2 steps forward, half step back, 5 steps back. I mean, it's been hard. And there was a lot that was on me to figure out, right? I had to, as I had daughters, which was all I ever wanted. But as my daughters hit certain key ages and stages, it tore open wounds that I thought were healed, but were not. And I had to work through a lot of stuff. I had hurt. I had a lot of pain and grief and rage. I had a lot of rage because I just, so much of my life was unsafe, and I felt really abandoned in some very fundamental ways. And I didn't want to carry that anger, and I didn't want to let that be what shaped me. And so I had a lot of therapy, and I worked hard. And my mom's second husband, just one of the most wonderful men I've ever known. And he was a critical part of my healing, which sounds crazy, but he was the bridge between me and my mom. And his death was a grievous loss for her, most of all, and for everyone who loved him. And it, in fits and starts, we slowly made our way to the place we are now. But it was only the summer of 2022, so it's not even been quite 2 years. When I go out to my mom, because she's far away and, kids, family, job, it's not a thing I can do like just on a Saturday, right? When I go out there, I'm almost always with either Kevin or the girls or somebody. But for whatever reason, I had a business trip out west and decided that I would take an extra day, like a Friday or a Monday or whatever. It was a long weekend, and detour down to my mom's and spend the weekend with her. And I think we talked for 18 hours a day. And my mom opened up about her life, what her relationship with her own mother was like, which was not great. My grandmother was a cold woman for her own reasons. Like it's a real American immigration tale. You know, her mother died. She was in an orphanage in Ireland. She makes the Atlantic crossing. She's got to pull herself up by her bootstraps. Not a lot of warm fuzzies there. And that impacted how my mom was raised. And then, of course, my mother finds herself the teenage bride of a violent sociopath dad. And, we end up, we're desperately poor. There's always cops at the door. It was a nightmare. It was just a terrible thing. And when you're a child, you look to your parents and the adults in your life to somehow miraculously shield and protect you. But it's not till you become an adult yourself that you understand that adults are just older and less delightful children. That we, as an adult, you have no more magical capacities than anybody else. And if you're carrying a lot of your own pain and your own damage, it's really challenging. And my mom was a battered woman. She was the victim of domestic violence, as we all were. But those days that I spent, she cracked the door, because my mom is very contained, very contained. She cracked the door and I saw what was behind it. And I came home and I said to Kevin, because he was like, well, did you have a good time with your, just you and your mom doing you and your mom things? And I said to Kevin, I went to my mother's house, but I left my mom's house. Like I went to visit my mother, but I left my mommy. And it was such a powerful and profound experience. And I'm so grateful for it. And I thought to myself as I was flying home from that trip, I thought, well, whatever happens or doesn't happen next, I feel like we finally got over a bridge to a place that's in the present. We're finally able to, both of us, leave the past in the past. And so things have been, great. And now this opportunity or need arises. And my mom, again, very contained, very independent, very strong, is going to be driven out of her whole mind by the Bob Sheri show, the Oddcast, talking large, weird stuff. Because my mom has never once lived a single day with somebody hooting and hollering into a microphone for, and I know that some of y'all can't imagine it because it seems like we work 4 hours a day and spend the rest of the day goofing off. Sometimes it's 10 or more hours a day. And so I told her that. I'm like, this is going to drive you crazy. And she said, well, if it drives me crazy, I'll just tell you so. And so that's kind of where we are. So the plan is we're going to do an experimental test run and see if I can work there without screwing the show up or driving my mom absolutely crazy. In April, in about a month and a half, I'm going to give it its first try. And I'm nervous because it's something that I've not ever tried with my mom. And I don't want to make her life challenging by bringing this carnival into her living room. But I'm also grateful that I have a job that allows me to be mobile at a time when I need to be mobile. And I recognize like what a privilege and how precious that is. Because I remember when Max's mom and dad, who were like my mom, they were literally in their 80s and 90s, but you couldn't wrap your head around it because they were so healthy and strong and youthful and busy and engaged in life and the world and each other, that you would say like, your dad is 89 now, but you couldn't imagine that 89 and Max's dad had anything in common. And when the time came, it was so hard on you, Max. It was so hard on you being even as close relatively, 800 miles as opposed to thousands of miles. Because Max's mom and dad used to live near my mom, where she is now.
Yeah.
And it was so hard on you. And you did the best you could, but
Yeah.
I definitely saw the struggle that you had trying to be in both places at once.
And my sister did a majority of the care of them because she lived nearby where they were at the assisted care facility at the end of their lives. And it was always a bit of she and I do not have a close relationship. And it doesn't mean that I wasn't appreciative of what she did. I mean, I'm very appreciative. But I have a sense of guilt over the fact that I wasn't the one taking them to doctor's appointments and I wasn't doing some of those kinds of things. But at the same time, my sister was the kind of person who was like, I'm going to take care of this and I'm going to wall you out. And so there was, there was some of that I couldn't get through. But I will say that I had a better relationship with my parents towards the end of their life, and a little bit like you did with your mom. I was able to break through a couple things. My mother was... my mother grew up in an alcoholic home. My mother, in turn, didn't know how to handle many social situations, didn't know how to handle children at times, and from a place of fear would do and say things that were abusive, and I'm not overstating that. They were abusive. So I think my brother's way of dealing with that was, I don't want any part of you. My way of dealing with it was, is there some way in? Is there some kind of something where I can see you as a human being? And I think that fortunately I was able to find some of that. And so I would say that I don't know if you would say it was a great relationship that I had with my mom, but I'll say it was as good as it was going to be. And I'm grateful for that. Because my brother hated taking her to the casino, the hour drive to go to the casino so she could play slot machines. He hated going there. He didn't like the smoke. He didn't like the noise. I looked at it as an opportunity for us to just spend a little time together and for me to at least try to have a little kind of common ground with her. And she was a very negative, difficult person. But I will say that during the course of those drives, I was able to right the ship with her and just say, we had some good times and reminisce about that stuff. And it would get her away from all the dark places and all the negativity and that sort of thing. And when I look back on that now, I cherish the fact that I did that. I didn't care where we went. I didn't care it was a casino. Casino's not my jam. But if that's where she wanted to go,
I remember, because just like you've been riding shotgun with me, I've been right there. I mean, Max is like my brother from another mother. And I remember the peaks and valleys of that journey, because Max's mom could be so harsh. And you could say to yourself, well, that's coming from a place of pain. That's coming from her own fill in the blank. But we can also be so real and honest and admit that it hurts like a mofo when it's coming your way. Even as you understand it, doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. And Max, I just remember toward the end of your mom's life, and by the way, when we say toward the end, we never knew when that would be, because Max's mom and dad both lived to be over 100.
We thought maybe they were perhaps immortal.
I mean, there was a point.
I mean, yeah.
And when you've got parents that cross the 100-mile mark and keep going, you're like, we've been thinking it might be the end for about 20 years now. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But toward the end, it was almost like, a door opened inside and herself, and she could see herself a little more clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And she was able to give something to you that we thought was never going to happen.
Yeah. And
Max had kind of accepted that it was never coming.
I think the fact that I didn't expect it made that easier. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes we put expectations on relationships. Parents do on children, children do on parents, and all of that sort of stuff. And so I didn't have that expectation. And I think that made me open to whatever it was that was going to happen. I don't think either of my siblings had the kind of relationship I had with my mother and my father too. I don't want to exclude him out of this, but my mother was very difficult, and my father enabled it. I mean, that's just,
Well,
it's close.
sometimes it can take your whole life to really, for the pieces to fall into place and go, oh, that's why this happened, or that's why you were like that, or that's why I always felt this way. And once you see that and know it, you know it forever. And it does changes your heart, I think, to make those connections. And Max's dad, listen, what a man. And what a hot man. What a hot.
I showed some pictures when my father was in his 20s, and Sheri went, ooh.
I'm looking at Max's dad, and I'm like, don't take this the wrong way, but I'd like to tear him from limb to limb.
And the thing about my dad is my dad was a man's man. Now, that is not to say he was chauvinistic.
No.
He wasn't at all. He treated women with respect. When I hear that they were a different generation, I think that's a load of crap, because my father never said that about women. He never treated women in that sort of way. My father was, I don't think that I could ever properly express what a fine person he was.
He was such a good man.
He was from the top to the bottom. He was.
You know how you hear people, they talk a good game about turning the other cheek, and love is a verb, right? People talk about that shit, and they buy signs from Hobby Lobby and hang them in their kitchen that say love is a verb and the path to joy is forgiveness. But Max's dad actually lived it without ever saying it.
He did.
He lived it.
He did.
Do you know what my father's greatest what he felt was his greatest accomplishment in business? Now, he worked for AT&T for 42 years. He worked with NASA. He worked with big accounts. He broke the glass ceiling for African-American women at a certain management level. He hired them into that level when that had never been done in that company. And that, to him, was his proudest accomplishment.
He was the real deal.
He was.
And I'll tell you what else he was. He was a loyal and faithful partner to your mom. And she didn't make it easy every day. And we can say that without being ugly.
I don't mean, look, she was human, and she was just a really difficult human. But that doesn't mean that I didn't love her. You know, and certainly I did, and I really tried as hard as I could to try to find a way in with her, and I think I did, and I you know, it was all of it, and I haven't processed it all, and I'm sorry to vomit it all up like this, but I haven't processed all of that. I've lost a relationship with my brother. It's kind of my choice. That's my fault, but. I
think fault is the wrong word.
That's my doing, and I have reasons why I have, and I think they're good reasons. My sister and I never had a close relationship. My sister is so wound up with anger inside, and gave me negative attributes that are certainly not the case, and there's nothing I can do about that. It's been a traumatic time, and there's times when I kind of look around and I go, wow, that's been difficult. And, you know, I have tried to, in dealing with both of them, be even and not cause further problems, and just say, okay, fine. If that's how you're going to be, if that's how you're going to act, that's fine. And just try to get through everything. I just don't know that we ever really sort through this stuff completely. And I'm sure in retrospect certain things will become apparent, you know, but they died about 7 months apart from each other, and I will tell you that it was always stressful to visit my mother because whatever time I arrived, it wasn't the right time. Whatever I was doing, it wasn't the right thing. Whatever weight I was, it wasn't the right weight. Whatever it was,
Whatever car you drove was
whatever
the wrong car.
I drove,
Yeah.
no matter what it wasn't going to be the right thing. And I knew that going up. And I remember after she passed away and I went up to see my father, all of a sudden the stress was gone. I went, and I remember thinking, if there was a part of me that felt a little bad about it, but there was another part of me that said, oh.
But can I tell you, Max, and I want to make it very clear that there are parental relationships that are so unsafe for you, not you, Max, I mean you, the big you, that are so emotionally or physically unsafe that you don't owe a violent or abusive parent your body or your soul. When my father exited my life, he stayed good and gone. I am not someone who tells you, well, it's your mom and dad, no matter what. There are transgressions that, whether or not you want to use the word forgiveness, but you deserve to set a boundary for your own safety, mentally, physically, emotionally. Yeah. But I will say that something that I watched happen with you, with your mom, I watched you move through the stage of bewilderment. Like, why is she like this? Why is nothing I do enough? I watched you journey through that to this realization that it was never you, that the brokenness and the hurting places were inside her, and that you were as powerless to fix those as an adult as you had ever been as a child, and that all you had left, the only tool you had left in your box, was to just love her and do the best you could. And that was that sounds like a happy ending. That's actually the beginning. That's not the ending. Because when you commit to loving someone and doing the best you can, even as they're ricocheting off every wall and taking bits and pieces of you with them as they go, you're still in that place of trying to, I'm just going to love you as best I can. And you did. And that is something you should always feel proud of, or a sense of, maybe a better way to put it is, you should have a sense of peace about, because you committed to loving your mom more than she could love herself. And you did it.
Thank you.
You did it.
Max, you got a lot
and
of
you did it in the wrong clothes, the wrong car, and the wrong weight. You did it all.
Yeah.
So,
I got a lot of my dad, but I didn't get any of the carpentry skills, the plumbing skills, the electrical skills, or any of the rest of that.
Yeah, but you got his looks, and you didn't get your mom's casino habit. So I think you won.
Yeah.
I might have picked up other things along the line, but that is one thing that it holds no.
You a hottie who doesn't gamble. I call that a win.
That's a win. That's a win.
So, it's kind of one of the great things about this job that we get to do is that we get to be humans with other humans, and we get to drop our guard and be real, and like people let us into their lives in a way that is like a mirror. You see yourself, and you see all the ways that you could do a little better or choose a little differently. And it's really a privilege. It really is.
It is. It is. One that we don't take lightly.
Ever. Mm-mm. And I guess we should wrap up this episode by pointing out that Max's mom and dad knew and loved Lamar. And Lamar, in some ways, was the favorite child over their actual
I never
children.
disappointed him. I never disappointed him.
And that was the joke. I would say to my father, well, he never disappointed you. And my father, his laughter seemed a little deeper than it should have been. But we had, I remember going out to their house when they lived out in Nevada, and they had the pictures. They had the pictures of all their children and Lamar's picture. It's the same size as the rest of my siblings.
Yeah, and your sister loved that, I know. They were great people. They were great.
They were good people.
Yeah.
They were good people, but they weren't perfect people, which makes them the best kind of people of all. They didn't
Yes.
pretend to be perfect. They didn't front. There was no bullshit. They were
No.
just good people doing the best they could through all the flaws and mistakes and craziness. Yeah.
Yep.
Good
That's
stuff.
right.
Do I have to pay a copay or do I have to
You give
This
me your
is on the
copay, I'll
house
give you
today.
mine.
file with my insurance or
On the next episode, we're going to go deep on all the times as children we felt neglected. No kidding. We just, where you are, we're there too.
Yeah.
We're just all in this big sloppy hot mess together. We are.
Yep.
And we thank you for listening to the Oddcast.
Thank you.
Yes.
Because as always, you're the reason we make it. Because if you weren't listening, then we'd just be talking to thin air, and that'd really be nuts. But they send people away for that shit. So we're trying not to get sent away. We'll see you on the next Oddcast.